Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Crash Course Metal Show. We got with us here a very special guest here today, and that is Derek Welsh from Mcqueen Street and a couple other projects as well, which we will get into. But Derek, my man, how are you doing, man?
Man, I'm living life largely, and I'm happy to be here.
Good, good, and we're happy as hell that you're here because you and McQueen Street are one of my favorite bands ever since high school. So this is certainly a bucket list interview for me to do. So can't welcome you enough.
Well, much appreciated on that, Trevor. Thanks, man.
Of course, of course. So, can you kind of give people the update of like what is Derek up to these days?
Well, that's a long list of things, but so I've always had my hand in music, because I love it. I grew up around music. My dad played music. He played instruments, going way back. I mean, when my brother and I were growing up, the atmosphere was always, there was a piano. My dad was a horn player and a piano player. He would have guys over to rehearse. I mean, I can remember being, I swear, I think 5 years old. God knows the dancing that might have gone on. I apologize if that was ever filmed. Hopefully not. But I went to I moved away. Did college, did the whole thing. Pretty much got into rock and roll. As a listener, I was into it way before then. But shortly after I got to college, I really got into um, playing slash performing. I think I started guitar maybe at the age of 12 or so. And I
Okay.
dabbled a little bit in piano, but I was never worth a flip. So I'll say that nicely. so, but did that for quite a few years, doing the whole cover scene in the Southeast.
Hmm.
Decided to get into doing the original thing, going after the what I would call the rock and roll dream, which was get a record deal, put music out there for the world to hear, and I've continued on. I mean, even after, we all went through how rock changed, and, we can blame whoever for it, but it did. And then, now we're at a completely different era with streaming. And,
Hmm.
in some ways, there's many great things about it. And you just got to kind of roll with the tide, and wherever it goes, follow, but do your own thing. And that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I'm always kind of writing music. Have played in some kind of reunion shows, things like that. Working on
Okay.
new projects, side projects, so on and so forth.
Okay. All right. Very good deal. And we will get to the some of the more modern stuff projects that you're working on because I do hear good things that what you're doing here. So, but first, Derek, can we kind of go into the time machine and kind of talk about
Yes,
the early of the beginning stages of McQueen Street? So, as you like you said earlier, you're in the southeast, like as far as like Alabama
right,
is, I believe, is where you guys are from.
correct.
And so how does a band from Alabama in the early '90s, like, just form or late '80s, early '90s, form and get the record deal? That seems like Alabama is kinda like one of those states you just don't hear too much about.
Well, you really don't, and there, we had uh, hell, the only rock and roll person I can really say would be tied to, well, to my area, which was Montgomery, would be Tommy Shaw, because he kind of, grew up playing in bands around there.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he was like, I might get this wrong, but he might have been the house band at the bowling alley. I'm not near there. Something, he might
Yeah.
hang me for that. But so it was the cover scene back then was pretty big. It
Mhm.
really was. And bands toured the entire Southeast, and you would play everything from clubs to college shows. And we played, uh, pretty much every weekend. We started off doing that, and I was probably still in school at the time, so
Okay.
couldn't really get away with doing 5 nights that way. But it was popular. Live venues were popular,
Mhm.
and kind of the when we got the band together, I wasn't I wasn't really a singer. I was like a rhythm guitar player. and we
Okay.
just had, this is only denounced mainly people that know me, would know this story, but lots of problems with singers, a lot of attitude problems. I guess
Mhm.
that would be the easiest way to put it. So I kind of had to learn how to morph into a lead singer.
Okay.
And we had a band before my brother was even the band. He was still in high school. And finally we recruited him, got him up to Alabama from Miami, which is where I grew up, my brother grew up,
Okay.
and pretty much picked up steam. The more we went, the more we did it. When you start making money and people start caring, you know, outside and telling you you're good, you start to feel like, hey, maybe this is something we can do.
Right.
And I probably started writing songs like at age 12. I mean, like definitely not good songs, but just being around it and picking up steam, that's kind of what made us want to go the route of going after a record deal.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say. So who found you then? Like as far as like did you guys just kind of stay in the Alabama Southeast circuit, or did you guys kind of like venture out a little bit and then get found, or what kind of was the like fallout of that?
Okay, we played pretty much every state in the Southeast as uh, Mcqueen Street, and before that we had another band, which is sort of irrelevant, I suppose. But
Okay.
McQueen
Now
Street,
was that what was that
uh,
class?
yes,
Okay. All right.
class with a K.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, so but, that started off, and we were kind of like a party band. My
Okay.
big thing was out chug anybody in beer drinking, including big football players, which is kind of funny because I wasn't ever big, but
Yeah.
but I was pretty good at it. So I had to end that part of the career. We got the demo, took it into a label. At the time that was SBK Records,
Oh.
and the A&R person, yeah, which goes, Nancy Brennan was A&R rep, so she heard it. Then, it seemed like we had some other interest all of a sudden. I think, I'm trying to think of what, he might have been with Geffen at the time. Maybe it wasn't Geffen. Michael Alago, he was a big industry name back
Okay.
then, came out and saw us live. But that kind of started the stream of interest. And then they started showing up to gigs. I mean, and back then, you might play for 8 people on a Thursday night. I mean, you didn't know. And you just,
Right.
you did what you did, and the show wouldn't change if it was one person or 1,000. Was irrelevant, didn't matter. So
Hmm.
that probably took, I don't know, 6 months maybe of negotiations. And, they wanted us to do a development deal, which means if for people who don't know what that is, it's kind of like, hey, record a song or two. We'll kind of like let you know what we think. We passed on that idea. We just,
Okay.
I think our manager might have had to her from the truth a little bit. Well, we
Yeah.
have so much interest, we can't do that. So anyway,
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
we
Okay.
ended up getting the offer. And at the time, Steve Stevens, Billy Idol's guitar player, I had written with him on the first record, the song Two Worlds.
Yes.
So Steve wanted to produce the band. We actually went and recorded 4 songs, I think, with Steve in Atlanta at a place called Triclops Studio, which is where, this is going way back. Mashing Pumpkins did the Siamese Dream record. And
Okay.
so it was pretty big. And then suddenly I get a call, hey, Tom Werman's interested. And we're like, oh, okay, Steve, it's Tom Werman. We can't say no. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way that sort of fell into place. But it was a long, hard road. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody
Okay.
was actually from Alabama.
Really?
The player, I think, was born in England. He wasn't English sounding at all, but
Hmm.
and the guitar player, Mike, was from Maine. He played in
Really?
another band. Yep. We were looking for, I could play lead guitar, but that was the era of, you had to be a wizard. I'm
Yes.
okay on the guitar. I'm no Mike. It's
You're
like,
right.
Derek, you need to sing. We need a real guitar player. So my brother was like shopping in the grocery store like at midnight and ran into Mike. And it was like, hey man, what are you up to? I just quit my band. What are you up to? Well, we're looking for a guitar player. So that's how Mike came about. He came in and it wasn't really even an audition. We knew the guy could play, but it just kind of
Hmm.
fell together. It was kind of like that magic in the air moment that we knew we had this thing,
Hmm.
and then,
Yeah, the
you know,
chemistry pretty much worked.
the chemistry was there, and we all knew it, and it just felt good and it felt right. We all have, I think, those moments in our lives, whether it's relationship, jobs, hobbies, when something feels good. And that was way, way, way back then. So
Okay.
that's
All right.
how that came into place.
Good deal. Good deal. So how did the name McQueen Street come about? Was it from Steve McQueen from Bullet, or was it just something that you guys
It,
kind of just came up with?
it would have been good if it was from Steve McQueen, because I
Yeah.
was a big Steve McQueen fan. So
Okay.
we have the big band meeting. Okay, guys, we need a name. This went on for flipping days. We kept coming up with names, and were they any good? Probably not. So I think it was my brother who said, hey, man, how about Mcqueen Street? And we're like, well, here's why. Our rehearsal studio was
Mhm.
actually on Mcqueen Street.
Oh,
And we're like,
really?
there's an actual street still to this day in Montgomery, Alabama called Mcqueen Street. It's why you probably
Okay.
sometimes will see signs that say McQueen Street. It's like a road sign. People would
Yes.
steal the sign. Like, they were like,
I know. I
hey
might
man,
need to get one of those as well.
it's weird how that came about, but it it just did, and it stuck, and everyone was like, man, that I don't know how you guys came out with that, but it's good. We're like, dude, it was the flipping street sign. I'm like, you know, so
That's a
that's how
name
we
just
got the
falling
name.
right into your lap.
Yeah, it pretty much did. And eh, we had gone through I mean, probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names. And it was like,
Hmm.
we'd throw them in the hat, try to pull them out. Everybody go, that sucks, or that's no good, or, whatever. And then one day my brother comes in and goes, hey, man, how about McQueen Street? I'm like, okay. And it just
Yeah.
stuck. So
Okay.
that's the
Very
story on
cool.
that one. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Cool. So then you did once Tom comes into the picture, you guys did end up releasing your debut album here in
Yes.
1991. Now you did have two, I guess, music videos, but there was a third, right? Time was kind of like a promotional video, or it never really got released. Is that correct? Or
It never really got released. So let's see. So we had My Religion was the one that kind of broke through for us. That was back during Headbangers Ball,
right?
And
And
again,
then
that
you
was,
had
hey,
money.
when's the yes, and then it was followed up
Okay.
with Money, and then we were going to shoot Time on a Hawaiian island up near the old volcano. And then, like, I don't know, a week before we were going to shoot, the flipping volcano erupts. Like,
Oh,
we
really?
can't go. So we shot Time in the studio, and it was kind of back then, I guess you called it blue screen or green screen. And,
Hmm.
it wasn't really what we wanted, and it never got released. And Time was a song that did really well at radio. And it just,
Yeah.
you know, timing, that was probably around that time was the Nevermind record came out, right around that
Exactly.
time, which was, obviously the beginning of, Smells Like Teen Spirit and the end of 80s rock for a while. So,
Hmm.
things just happened, and that's kind of where that went. But we did shoot three separate videos.
Okay. Yeah, because even In Heaven got a little bit of run, I believe, like on singles charts.
In
So
Heaven
it
did the best of all our songs. It charted
okay.
at 31 or 32. Let's see if I have a chart around here. I don't think I do, but I want to say 31, maybe 32 or 33 on the AOR album oriented rock chart in Billboard
Okay.
way back then. And I'm not
Right.
good with charts, but it did well. It was really a radio successful song back then.
Mhm. Right, right, and rightfully so, because it's a great song, easily digestible for a lot of different people, not the sleaze rockers or the heavier guys, anyone can access, easily digest that song. So, but yeah, was there
Exactly.
anything on this album that you kind of weren't happy with, or was there like a song that was like easy for you to do? And then was there a song that was like a bitch for you to do vocal wise or just to put down on tape or what have you?
You know, I'm going off memory and I'm gonna say that I mean the time-consuming song was probably not necessarily vocally, but just there's so much in it was my religion. It's a lot of
Yeah.
different parts and a lot of different things going on. The I remember I always love singing when I'm in the mood. Just it's balls to the walls, rocking, screaming. I'd
Right.
have to do that the outro part of that, and then I'd have to like pass out and lay down on the floor and hold my head because it would hurt. Dudes would be like, "Damn, man, what was that?" I'm like, "I don't know, it just came to me." It
Yeah,
wasn't.
and there are a decent amount of those parts where that you do vocally, like, your vocals are distinct on this album, and I think that's what really stands out. One of the things that really stands out on this album, and that really kinda stands it apart from a lot of what was because '91 was a great year, I'm not gonna deny that, but, like, this album certainly stands up in 1991 as one of the best, in my opinion.
It was very tight, and it was pretty. Sort of what you're conveying is sort of what I think and a first record. I mean, you'd have things
Mhm.
from, going back to Mexico, and then you'd have Only the Wind. It was like there was like kind of far ends of the spectrum. And then, Only the Wind was just a completely different vocal than Stick It. It just wasn't, not even the same vein of song. Stick It's like the
Right.
big, middle finger, and Only the Wind is like, you know, a heartfelt, slow-ish ballad, I guess.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
That's
first.
another point to this record that I like as well. Like you said with the variety, but uh there's fun songs, like somewhat party songs, but there's also like soul searching style songs and very mature songwriting on other songs as well, which I think is great.
Well, much appreciated. And you do, when you do any kind of art, whether you're a painter or a musician or whatever it might be, you can't really think about, I'm gonna write this type of song. It kind of people songwriters have said, the song kind of wrote itself. Sometimes that would be me sitting down and coming up with a riff or whatever or a vocal, and then sometimes we could just be in a room and it would just kind of happen. Things were somewhat unpredictable. I mean, that's what rock and roll is kind of needs to be about.
Yeah.
Yes, there's somewhat of a, you want to stay within, you don't want to write a 20-minute song because who's going to sit through 20 minutes of that? How
Yes.
many guitar solos can you stand or singers trying to show off their vocal chops?
Yeah.
Like, boys, keep that one at home. We don't need that. So
Right.
you know, it's uh, uh, it's just one of those things. The unpredictability of rock and roll is kind of what I really love about it.
Okay. All right. Awesome. If you guys enjoy this content that we're doing here, please like the video, please share it, and then please subscribe. That helps the channel out so much. Just helps everything that we're doing here. And also leave me a comment as well. Always interested to see what you guys had to say. Now let's jump right back into this video. All right. So, Derek, can you kind of like once the album's released here now, your debut, did anything were you guys kind of like promised the world as far as like once you guys got signed, and it'd be like, oh, we're gonna promote this and like because obviously like you said, Nirvana's coming around, grunge is coming around. Was it kind of like a flick of the switch overnight to where like yeah, we're not promoting your stuff anymore. You guys are getting cut on tour or any of that kind of stuff that you ran into?
Not really during the midst of the first record. When we really noticed it was right around the time of slightly previous to the beginning of the recording of album two.
Okay.
That's when we noticed it. And I remember distinctly, I've told this story before, not a lot, but we were doing, we would do radio tours, which essentially would be, usually it was just me. Sometimes it would be me and Mike with an acoustic guitar. You'd go, you'd interview, you'd perform, a couple of songs, whatever. And I remember one time we were maybe out doing a whole band thing somewhere. We were in I can't remember, it was a limo, a town car or something, but the head lady from radio said, "Hey guys, I want you to give me your opinion on something." And everyone was like, "Okay, all right." And she says, "I want to play this band and listen to this song." And, well, I didn't know what the song was. And it was like maybe 30 seconds in, the guys in the band were going, "Man, this sucks. These dudes can't play." I didn't say anything. She says, "Derek," she says, "Derek, what do you think?" I said, "Well, I mean, you know, what do you want me to say exactly?" She said, "Just tell me how you feel." I said, "I really don't hear it here. I can't see this song doing much of anything. So I don't know. Is this a band that like maybe is going to get signed?" Well, the song Smells Like Teen Spirit. My God, was I wrong?
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming from a million miles away, but
Yeah.
that changed everything.
Hmm.
Everything. So I think as soon as Nirvana hit, that switch for every rocker.
Right.
I mean, if you were a guitar hero, well, of course you remember. They're still around. Night Ranger. I
Yeah.
remember we were playing a club, and maybe one of the guys in the band, his wife's friend, dated Brad Gillis, and Gillis is in the club.
Okay.
Like, and this wasn't Mcqueen Street. This was like, another band after that, and I'm like, my God, that's flipping Brad Gillis. But that really changed everything for everybody. But
Okay.
it probably affected money and how things were promoted towards the end of album one,
Hmm.
but we didn't know that. You
Yeah.
know, knowing
Okay.
what I know now about the business, it probably had a big effect on every band.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, because you even had like the titans of hair metal or sleaze metal and stuff like Warrant, all the big boys, Poison, they were even getting put down into, oh, we're not really worried about you. We're not going to promote your album anymore. We're moving on to Allison Change and Soundgarden, which is kind of actually strange that you guys do some shows with those bands as well?
We played, I want to say Soundgarden played a concert that was like a festival in
Okay.
Tampa area, lot called Livestock, which
Okay.
was way long ago, but it was huge. And then we did uh, at Cabo Wabo at Sammy Hagar's club, MTV and KNAC did a big thing, and all these bands came in. Allison Chains. I didn't even know who they were.
Right.
It was a band called Kick Tracy. I don't think they ever did anything big, but they were pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
Steve
Yeah. Their
Earle,
first album is really good. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and lots of bands. Bang Tango played it. I mean, they
Okay.
were big back then.
Yep.
Armored Saint,
Hmm.
and we got off the stage. We were probably four bands before the headliner, maybe something like that. And it's a smaller club. Well, I'm just standing out in the crowd and I hear this chant, "Alice," just from the distance, and then it took over.
Hmm.
It was like, what? Well, Alice in Chains is about to go on,
Yeah.
and they opened up, I think, with Rooster, and I was like, I would sing it, but I'm not going to. Which is one of their great
Yeah.
songs. It's kind of, but that was the Seattle thing was its own thing.
Right.
With like sound, because nobody can deny that Cornell couldn't flip and sing. My God,
Hmm.
Chris Cornell was like the man. So
Yeah.
yeah, we did some shows, and Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains was very cool, like a
Okay.
very nice guy. I didn't know these guys,
Yeah.
but he was like, whatever. We were drinking beer. He's like, "Hey man, you should come fishing with us." And this was like at, I don't know, 2 in the morning. Like what time? I'm expecting like 4 p.m. tomorrow or something.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like 5 a.m. and I'm like what day? He's like this morning. I'm like no.
Yeah. In a couple hours, just go home and change, and we'll go do it.
He's like a hardcore fisherman. But anyway, so it was pretty cool. I mean, most of those bands, for the most part, everybody there would be some really cool guys in those bands.
Hmm.
Lots of them.
And that's kind of weird because, well, not weird, but like it's weird that there for like a year or maybe even shorter than that, there was a period of time where like the sleaze bands, the hair metal bands, and then also like what would become grunge bands, they ran parallel with each other, and media was cool with it for like a very very short period of time. Because like from old magazines like Rip magazines, Hip Parader magazines, and stuff that I read during that time, they're both being promoted. Like both of your like both subgenres are being promoted, and it seems like maybe like MTV was like the X factor, or just maybe the music, like the record labels were the X factor and said, no, we're just totally done with this hair metal subgenre and sleaze metal and stuff like that, and we're only going to be doing grunge. Is that kind of like what you kind of saw too? Because other bands even say like, oh yeah, we were all kind of friends. We didn't really see each other too much differently than each other.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty accurate. Most musicians, despite the genre differences, could
Hmm.
get along pretty well. And you'd go whatever. I mean, it could be, you know, Soundgarden guys, it could be Great White guys, Slaughter guys, didn't matter.
Hmm.
Most people were pretty cool. And even, like was it the Money Money Boss Tones with the horns and all that,
Hmm.
there everybody could kind of get along. And the industry, somewhere within the industry, it was like when you were tied into 80s rock or had a look or that look or anything, it was
Hmm.
like no go. You might as well just hold up an unemployed sign because that's how it was.
Yeah,
It's bad,
that's
really
that's
bad. But
amazing.
yeah, I mean, I would. Well, it was. That's the other problem with that. The average person's never going to know this, but they think that it's all fun and games for a musician, but really, you're traveling, you're doing interviews and signings, and you don't have much time except wake up in the next town.
Hmm.
You could do a whole tour and like you can't remember what city you were in.
Yeah,
It's very different, and things back then were so everything was pretty much run by the industry, and it wasn't really it was business decisions and higher ups, and they called the shot. And then it didn't matter how much talent you had, it didn't matter
yeah,
how good your songs were. If you were this, then it was no go. And
right.
we've gotten away from that, I think, in music, I hope. But that's the beauty of these days. Anybody can get the music out there with
Hmm.
streaming and technology. Now, if
Right.
you're going to auto tune your vocal and all that, well, no, if you wrote it, sing it or play
Yeah.
it. We could go on
that
for days.
that does seem to be an issue in recent years, but I agree with you as far as like everyone kind of has a voice now, as far as getting their own work and music out into the public eye. But at
Right.
the same time, it can kind of hurt though too, because that's something that we debate on the channel here. Like, yes, that is nice for everyone to get out there, to be promoted out there, but at the same time, does it water down the music genre, or just for the audience in general? Does it? It's harder for the cream to rise to the top, essentially.
Agreed. And it's hard to when there's that much out there and there's no way to, I suppose, filter it somewhat.
Hmm.
Have such a wide array of stuff out there. You're getting well, you're getting quantity and you're losing on quality, which
Yeah.
is part of probably, what gets said back and forth. But yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's great because for bands that have talent, you don't have to get that great record deal, which frankly wasn't really a great deal for the band. It's a
Right.
great deal for the label,
Hmm.
you know. But on the downside to the big record deal was that very few people struck deals. I
Yeah.
mean, really, they couldn't. And you know this from great albums. Why didn't this get big?
Hmm.
If they didn't want to push it, they didn't put the money into it. Who's going to hear it?
Exactly.
Well, we all have our bands where like I have no idea why this isn't huge. You
Hmm.
know, you have a slew of them, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. That seems to be all what I talk about. Yes. So, yeah, definitely. And that, that
Well,
that just blows my
it's
mind every year. Ever since I was like 12 years old, it always blew my mind how some albums just never got the light of day, even from people and fans that love this genre, that love sleaze metal, hair metal, and stuff like that. But and they were like, I don't know how I went 40 plus years and didn't know about this album, and which is kind of cool to hear, but at the same time, it's like really sad at the same time because like you just missed out on like the last better late than never, but it's wild to think about that.
Yeah, I know, but I mean that's a fact. I mean, it's just the
Hmm.
way it is, and when you're in the business, whether it's radio as a performer, as an A&R person, what it is, when you're on the inside of music like that, you know a lot and you learn a lot of things that you would never have any idea. And
Right.
you talk to people all the time. Their perception of what we do is one
Yes.
thing. The reality is like, what? I get dudes
It,
like,
it's
man, you must love this. And I'm like,
yes, it's totally night and day. Like what actually happens and what people think. It is really almost like running your own business to an extent. Being in a band, you have to
really?
take it that seriously.
Yeah, wait, well, I would say I will change your phrase to it's almost like to it's definitely like it.
Okay. Yes. Okay. All right.
You're running your own business, and if you don't have um, full control of the reins of that, you're probably in trouble. And that's the problem with back in the day of getting the record deal. You really lost overall control
Hmm.
because guess what? Who wrote the checks? You know, the
Yeah.
label.
Right.
Everything chilled in. And you didn't make money if they didn't have X amount of sales.
Yes,
It's just the way
and
it
that's
was.
to your point. I talked to many of bands, and they told me about like their first contracts. They would literally have to go gold, even platinum. You had to go gold at least to make your money back to not be in debt, and then to make even any kind of money, you would have to kind of hit just even single platinum to make anything, And now every band's contract is different, but generally speaking,
Right.
that's the consensus of what I hear, and that just absolutely blows my mind because like most of the bands that we know don't make any money, and that's just
No.
wild. And to your point of what people perceive, oh, they saw you on MTV Headbangers Ball. Oh, you got to be making money. That's what they think, or you're famous and rich and stuff. And it's the complete opposite, which is mind blowing to a lot of people.
It, yeah, and you may have talked with different artists about this, but your cut on the sale of a record is so minimal of what goes to the band. If
Hmm.
it were, and I'm just going to throw out back then, if CDs were $10, the band might get $1 of that.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, that's what
if
I
you
hear as
spent
well. Hmm.
Okay, so you spend $300,000 recording a record, which wouldn't have been out of the question. I'm sure Mcqueen Street spent that.
Hmm.
Then you spend 100 to 150 grand for a video. Then you've got radio promotion, you got a tour bus, you've got a crew.
Hmm.
Well, you're paying out so much money if your bill is $1 million that you've spent. Okay, and you're getting $1 per album, 1 million albums sold, $1 million. You've paid your debt.
Yeah.
People have no idea. And if fans knew that, they probably wouldn't have signed the deals they signed. You
Exactly.
just think big and famous, and I see them, and they're not that at all.
Hmm.
You know, the main thing is you do it because you love it, and if you love something, it becomes not work. It's a passion, and that's I think that's why people listen to music.
Hmm.
They love it. They don't get paid any money to listen to music. They pay money to listen to it.
Yes. Yep.
We all do. So, that's a simplified version of it.
Right. So that kind of leads me a little bit to the next question then. So once the grunge, and you kind of pointed to this earlier, once the grunge came around, you kind of saw the money not coming towards you guys anymore as far as like uh touring and just for the next album. Because you guys did do a second album, Mcqueen Street 2 is what it's known as now. And do you have
Right.
any kind of like story behind that? Like, did you guys just get totally cut or dropped essentially? And can you just kind of like give us a little bit of information on Mcqueen Street too?
Yeah. So, I remember being, again, it's been many years. I think we were probably in Nashville doing the basic tracks for McQueen Street 2, meaning uh, guitars, drums, bass. I wasn't cutting vocals in Nashville. I went to New York to do all that.
Okay.
We did like maybe some overdubs, backing vocals, and all the mixing happened in New York. But I distinctly remember being in Nashville talking about what maybe with one of the record reps about what was going on. And a lot of bands from pretty much every label were A, getting dropped, B, the record would get shelved, meaning, it's done, but we're not doing anything with it.
Yep.
And you clearly saw that coming. And then uh, I can't remember if we got dropped or we were just like disgusted and just said, we're just not doing this anymore.
Hmm.
Again, many, many years, but that would probably be uh, a similar scenario with many bands of that era. I
Right.
can't speak for the like huge artists,
Hmm.
like the list is long, but probably somewhat similar though, because when the label who is basically funding everything and they're doing all of the promotion,
Hmm.
radio, video, advertising, all of that is no longer bankrolling that. What do you do?
Yeah.
It's like trying to run a business and you can't advertise. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I just remember it being a very unstable time for rock and roll for
Mhm.
quite a while. And forgive me, I can't remember if I don't think we got like a letter, you're dropped or anything like that. It
Okay.
just kind of ended. And then,
Right.
it was pick up the pieces, what do we do? And uh, we decided, let's put out two. And we pretty much did it all ourselves, and promoted it. And by that time, the band wasn't really, we weren't active anymore
Hmm.
after, I mean, probably, I forget when we did two, 92, maybe 93,
Yeah. Okay.
somewhere in there.
That would
So,
be
but it
roughly
didn't,
about right. You know.
right. And it probably came out in 2000 and maybe, I mean, you'd have to
Yeah.
read an interview with me. It
I
was
remember.
way later,
Yeah, I remember
like
seeing
way,
like early 2000s.
okay, that sounds about right.
Okay.
So it was that long, and we had this, I had written all that material, all literally, I went and drove to like some deserted beach house and wrote the whole record, and then came back and we worked it out, in the rehearsal room, and then it was many years till we
Okay.
could do anything with it,
Yeah. Now, is there now? Do you have that on your website at all, McQueen Street 2, or is there like any copies still around of that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
All
You
right.
can
Cool.
go to, let me think here. It's not sold out. I believe you can go to mcqueenstreet.com and find like merch,
Okay.
records, sorry, CDs.
Yeah. Yep.
People hounded me for years, dude, where's the vinyl? And I'm like, like I like vinyl. I it just sounds good to me.
Yes. Yep.
But
But sometimes it is, unless you get like mass quantity, it is a you need to charge a decent amount for that vinyl then. So it's a, catch 22 kind of deal for the vinyl anyway. So
very
do you
catch 22.
do you have that poster behind you on your website, like for merch, the McQueen Street one?
Not for sale. Not,
Okay. All
not for
right.
sale because I don't think there's one in existence. Maybe that.
Okay. I saw that back there and I'm like, oh
I,
shit, hopefully you have some for sale.
I, if I had an extra one, I'd probably have had to have sold it. But that's the only one I know of. And if I'm not mistaken, even that little suspect,
Yeah.
it's pretty beaten up. It's that was way back in the day. And there's somewhere in here there's Mcqueen Street two. Oh well, I don't even know if you can see that one that's under it and to the left. I'd have to turn my
Nah,
screen.
yeah, I can't see it.
I'd have to
But
go get it and hold it up. But that
okay.
that was Mcqueen Street. So we have a lot of different shirts and merch and some stuff from back in the day. I think we have the Stick It T-shirt, which do you know the story on
Yes, that reminds me of the Puddle of Mud singer, right? He wore that
yes,
shirt in one of
yeah,
his music videos.
yeah. Give me a second. She hates me.
Yes, that one.
That she
Yep.
So yeah, somebody calls me up, hey dude, are you watching MTV? I'm like, no. You might want to turn it on. By the time I started watching, it was already over.
Okay.
But the singer's wearing the shirt, and you see sort of McQueen Street, but he turns around and clearly it says "Stick It" right on the back, and
That's
that's
badass.
what it was. Where he got it, how he got it, I don't know. Did he play a show with him? I don't even know.
Maybe you
So
never know. He might have been at the the Florida one, the festival, or with Soundgarden. You never know.
I know, and it just it always pays to be cool to if you're the opening band, be cool with the headliner. You're the
Yeah.
headliner, be cool with the openers because you know it's a road that can go like this. It's like
Yeah.
careers.
Everything comes
People
back around. You know. Yep. You
there you
got you
go.
got to
It's
treat
cutting.
people the same as the on the way up, as same as on the way down, because you meet everyone on both scales. Have you ever seen one of these recently? The McQueen Street sampler with the three songs,
Yeah,
and like the
of
opening
course.
here is of the chick on the
Yes,
front. Okay, I was like, I found this like last year, and I'm like, holy shit, I didn't even know. Because like, there's a couple. You don't see the samplers too much. Like, I have a couple of them with different bands and stuff, but like, that seems to be like an early '90s thing, at least from what I've seen. And I don't know, like, did you have any idea of like what sales anything that you did for the first album do? Like, obviously it didn't go platinum and stuff like that, but like, were you at least were you told, yes, we are actually doing something here? Like, you feel like you have momentum.
I felt like we had some pretty good momentum, uh, and what I do remember is that it took way longer for the record to come out than what they told us.
Okay, that seemed
Finished
to
the
happen a
record.
lot.
Oh my God. We finished the record and it seems like it was December of, I forget, did it come out in, I couldn't even tell you what year it was when one came out. Look at the copyright and
Yeah,
tell me.
91 officially, yeah, on
Okay.
the
It was,
sampler and the album.
yeah, okay. So if it was December when we got finished with the final mixes, it was mid to end of summer before we had a video on MTV.
Okay.
They kept telling me, it's coming up, it's coming up. I was in the shower and Headbangers Ball was on, and I heard Dukatow, don 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 don, and I was like, oh my God. I came out and there we were, and I was like, I'm in my towel.
Yeah.
like like but it took that long, and then I felt like we were, as things were getting airplay and we were getting the asked to go here, and we did um, various shows, and then the Cabo Wabo thing.
Hmm.
I felt like we were moving along. We I'm sure we sold 150,000 records, or maybe a little bit more, and we were doing pretty well in Europe. A we had a commercial. I think Money was in a Jim Beam commercial.
Oh,
You'd
really?
have to, I Yes, somewhere someone found it on online, but it was Jim Beam, and I thought things are moving good, and then and then the whole
Right.
uh, Nirvana thing, and it just changed the tune. And what's weird, I wasn't a Nirvana fan, but I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Dave Grohl,
Yep.
the guy can sing, he can play, and he can write.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what's funny is I don't even know if you know this. Here's a little trivia. They picked up a keyboard player. Did you know that?
Really? No, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
came from a little unknown band you'd never heard of called the Wallflowers.
I have heard of the Wallflowers before.
They were huge back in the day. So the singer of the Wallflowers, his dad was a little bit on the famous side. Uh, Guy's first name was Bob. The singer, his dad was
Okay.
first name Bob, last name Dylan.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that name certainly rings a bell.
So Jacob Dylan sang for the Wallflowers, and Rami Jaffe played
Oh,
keys, and
okay.
he's now the keyboard player for the Foo Fighters, which
Interesting.
is
I didn't know that.
he's monstrously good. I mean, mind-blowingly good on the B3, on anything
Okay.
probably. But so
Right.
anyway, little inside
Okay.
info.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Thanks for giving me another ripple in my brain there for the information. So,
As if you need more ripples in the brain. I mean, you're
yeah.
like, how many things do I need to remember here?
So now after McQueen Street, you end up doing the Rat Race, is that correct? Like a psychedelic type band?
Yes.
How did that go? That like because I never up until like recently I never really heard anything about that project.
So back, after McQueen Street was over and hard rock was, you know, dead pretty
Hmm.
much, even though that's what I loved, I still liked 70s rock and trippy rock, and the Rat Race was a complete polar opposite venture from what McQueen Street was. Very, not gong gong gong, guitar heavy like that. It
Hmm.
was more in the vein of what I would say, somewhere in between like Tom Petty-ish, maybe a little bit of the. I'm trying to think of some. It wasn't like psychedelic like Pink Floyd or anything like that, but more
Okay.
vibey, and people always laugh. Well, they don't laugh. They're always like, "Dude, you must have been on some heavy drugs," because a lot of the song there were titles like "When the Morphine Comes," "6 Feet Off the Ground," everybody. Give me a second. Everybody must be high.
Okay.
All sorts of songs. And we put out 3 records with that band, and we toured the Southeast a lot. We didn't have a deal. We weren't getting rich, but we played clubs 3 to 5 nights a week
Okay.
continuously. But it never, you know, never took off huge. We had good following in certain areas, but you know, did it because I wanted to keep doing music and liked doing it, and wrote songs. You had to back then. It was kind of like if you were, and you had a radio show that was all hard rock or
Hmm.
80s metal or whatever you want to call it. You had to shift gears. I think
Yeah.
that's what I did. And it was probably 93, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 would be the last year of that. 8, maybe somewhere in there. But,
Okay.
I enjoyed doing it, and it was good players in the band. And, but it wasn't like doing a McQueen Street show.
Yeah.
It was its own animal.
Yeah. Yep.
So
It,
that's
it just lets you,
to that.
yeah, just lets you kind of do something else, express your creativity in a different way as well. I'm sure that was nice.
That Yes, which is that hits the nail on the head. I mean, you don't you can't give up what you love to do, but sometimes you have to find a different way of doing what you do. Kind of find another what's the word I'm looking for? Another
Avenue.
point to touch on.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what I did. And, I did, after the rat race, I did like a lot of cover shows and did really well doing that. Weirdly, better financial, I did better financially than when I had
Yeah.
to deal with, the label because
I
it was huge.
I
College
hear
kids
that all the
wanted to hear
time.
that.
Yeah.
You know the deal. I
Yep.
mean, what's weird is so many years later, they wanted to hear Guns N' Roses. They wanted to hear Def Leppard, Led Zeppelin. I mean, the list
Poison.
goes on.
Yeah. Yep.
All of that. I mean, I hate to say it. How many times I must have done Ain't Nothing But a Good Time. I mean, it, it was endless, but we could do, The Who, I mean, whatever. And you got paid phenomenal money.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so weird is to be on MTV, people packing out the house, and you're making nothing. I mean,
Right.
just barely making ends meet.
Yeah.
So, I talked to, of course, you remember LA Guns,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
band LA Guns. So I went to see them. We were in Mcqueen Street was in New York, and they were playing a club. They were opening for the band Kicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
so we got to go backstage, and pretty much everyone in LA Guns was pretty cool. Only one guy wasn't cool, but the band was cool. They got Tracy Guns told me how much they were making, and it was shocking how low it was per
Mm-hmm.
week.
Yeah.
This plus per diem, and I was like, what? Like,
That
how do you?
that's crazy. And they even have a gold record, multiple gold records to their name. So and that's just amazing. Like you can do greatness and still, like you said, not make ends meet, hardly, or just get paid barely minimum wage, or ah man, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I know. And some of these bands, like a band like Tesla, how good that band is, still out playing, but
Yeah,
they're playing like small venues. Because guess what? If you want to play and that's what you do and you're good at it, find a way to keep doing it.
exactly.
So I'm sure you've talked to many different artists, and they all have their own story about that. It's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It is.
and we're always like, how is it like this? But it was, especially back in the day, what people thought was just, man, you got to be a multimillionaire. I'm like, really? I can barely make my car payment. Driving a
Yeah.
Honda, I need big tires.
Yes,
We could
and
go on.
that's crazy because like I tell people that really aren't that into music like myself and stuff like, and they think that when we watch like old '80s music videos and stuff, like even like the OGs, like fans and stuff like that, they're like, man, they had it made, like and stuff like that, and I'm like, no, not really, I mean, yeah, they were on TV, but like they didn't have it made, like it's not like you never had to work again in your life, you know.
It's so not what people think it is. And granted, the music part is great.
Hmm.
There's nothing about it that's not great, but there's way more than just your hour or two on the stage is great. But it's all the other hours in the day and getting from here to there and the sound checks, the crew having to break down, or if you're hurting for money, you're breaking down,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It,
Right.
I went from tour bus to I hate to say this, minivan and a trailer.
Yep.
That's what I had to do.
You're not the only
And you,
one.
and you
You're,
just yeah, I mean, it, anybody that never got massive has similar stories. And
Mhm.
even then, you know, uh, maybe they retired, they didn't do it again. Vito Bratta from Line.
Right.
I don't think he got out of music.
So yeah.
It,
Yeah,
it
there's a couple
blows my mind.
guys.
We could go on with that, but it's I think you have to find, you have to be really connected to what your inner soul is telling you.
Right.
If this is what you love, find a way to do it.
Mm.
And it might not always pay the bills it used to pay, or it might sometimes pay more than they used to pay, but that's not what it's about. Do music for the love of music, the rest will come or not come.
Exactly. That's a great way to pin that conversation, because I agree 100% with that. As long as you do what you love, you never really work a day in your life, but you would like to have a little bit of the dividends come your way. But nonetheless, though.
Right, right. But if you're only doing it for the money, you don't really love what you're doing. You
Correct.
love the money.
Yep.
But
Yep.
that's, and you've met people like that, they're all about the money, and you've met people that are all about the art.
Yes. And you can tell. You can tell that's night and day difference as well. So,
Yeah, it's how they carry themselves. You'll want to talk to them for about 5 minutes when all they care about is themselves and the money. They're like, hey
yep.
man, great talking to you. The weather's good. We'll see you soon.
Exactly, exactly. So, Derek, one of the questions I had with one of your songs on the debut album was "Woman in Love," like the intro, like the two girls. I always wondered that this has been bothering me for a long time because I was a big fan of like Jay and Silent Bob, Chasing Amy, Big Daddy, and stuff like that, and I always thought it was Joey, like Adam Sandler's girlfriend in Big Daddy. I always thought it was her because she has a very distinct voice, but you probably know exactly who it is. So I'm gonna throw it to you and ask, do you know who the two women were at the beginning?
Uh, yes, I definitely know that one was a girl that was dating my brother at the time, Chris.
Okay.
And the other one, I'm relatively sure, was an actress by the name of E.G. Daly, who was at the time, uh, right before our record, maybe 4 or 5 years before, was in one of Pee Wee Herman's big movies. It might have been his girlfriend in the movie. I'm not positive. I don't know all the details, but pretty sure it was E.G. Daly.
Okay. All right. Very interesting because I thought, like I said, that question has been bothering me the last 15 plus years now. And I just had to ask the man that was there. So just get see if you had a good answer for that. So,
I don't know if it's a good answer, and I'm going off memory from, I hate to say, how many days ago. You uh, that's who I think it is.
all right, all
Pretty
right.
sure.
That's a good enough answer for me to take anyway. I'll run with that one. So, one of the biggest questions people are asking when they're watching this video is, what does the future hold here? The near future hold for Derek and Mcqueen Street? Is there new material? Is there live shows coming up? What can you tell us?
There's always a possibility thing in the near future. That's a little bit vague answer. However, so I can foresee more music coming. I can see potentially some songs that, well, obviously people have never heard before.
Hmm.
We did put out a couple singles maybe a couple years back, which I think One Way Ticket was one of them. I'm trying to think of what the other single was, but so there's been some newer stuff, and I can foresee that happening. Potentially another record, happening. To give an exact time frame, I couldn't.
Hmm.
Would I ever say no? It's never going to happen. Definitely not going to say that. I can uh, safely say that people will definitely hear something from us sonically, song wise, um, actual shows. If there was, I wouldn't want to do small club touring, uh, but I would not be opposed to a big festival kind of situation. We did Rocklahoma, which is pretty big, maybe 2 years ago,
Okay.
and that was pretty big. There was some pretty big artists playing it, bands from back in the day. Even I want to say that. I mean, I even think Rudy Sarzo from Quiet Riot, and
Yeah,
Quiet Riot was there, maybe.
right.
Jelly Roll was there. Of course, he wasn't hard rock, but but there was a lot of rock bands, and I think that that would be something I would enjoy doing, and I think would be good for the band to do.
Okay, very cool. I'm glad to hear that you're still, you know, being creative and doing stuff. That's absolutely awesome because just to have one album of McQueen Street is a crime against humanity, Derek. Only having one. So definitely quite excited to hear that. And now, is there any way that fans can follow you? But like you said, you do have a website. I will put your website in the description below as well, and the merch store and everything. Is there any way that they can follow you?
Got a Facebook page, Mcqueen Street, that you can probably find a link to, and if you don't, message me and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Um, you know, the second that we had a obviously a new release of whatever that might be, people hear about it. Would be on the website. If people don't know this, you can get on streaming and find all the material from McQueen Street 2 is on there.
Okay.
All of McQueen Street 1, the singles which aren't on any of the records. Uh, One Way Ticket. I think a song called maybe it's Outside In is another one that
Okay.
wasn't on McQueen Street 2. Definitely not on 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Because
there, so
yeah, One Way Ticket that actually did pretty well. On the underground charts, right? That had some run on the
pretty well.
underground charts. Hmm.
Yeah, it
Okay.
did pretty well. And the I think the biggest thing is just to be, you know, having new stuff, is a big deal. It's for many reasons. For obviously for fans of the band,
Hmm.
come on, man, we've heard these songs enough times. When's something new coming out? I
Hmm.
mean,
I agree.
I'm guilty of saying that about bands that I like.
Right.
Uh, if there's a problem and someone needs to be arrested, go after the McQueen Street singer. He's responsible. That's all I would say to that.
Uh, so, final question that I have for you here, Derek, is what do you think the biggest misconception of McQueen Street is or was?
Um, that I gotta ponder on that for a second.
Okay.
I mean, if you got clumped in as a hair band
Hmm.
or an 80s rock band, people thought, you know, all you did was party, all you did was do drugs, pick up chicks. You
Hmm.
know, that really wouldn't be at all what we were about. Uh, the song Woman in Love, where they're talking at the beginning,
Yeah. Yep.
tongue in cheek at that's like the last thing that I want to do is
Right.
be that guy. You know, I can't say what the general public might have thought about McQueen Street as, you know, so, but if you just saw the photo of the band, the the chick on the album, you might have a conception that the band is this way only, and that would not have been and isn't what we were really ever about or about now. And
Hmm.
it's we're just like, I hate to say it, it's just anybody else. We're like the
Yeah.
person next door. We do rock and roll. That's what we do, and think of it more simplistically, and not what you were spoon fed as like, hey, here's these guys, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
we go ahead.
did you guys have any say in the artwork or the album cover at all, or was that kind of just what the record company wanted to do, and you guys didn't have no say?
So we got me and the manager of the band. We got flown to New York. There was a big meeting in a conference room. The whole label was there, president of the label, and there was this thing that was covered up. I don't know what it was, and they brought in the head of marketing and they unveiled it and said, "What do you think?" And I'm not going to go into my exact reply, but So zero say in that cover, like zero,
I,
and that's kind of how it is.
yeah, I hear that. That's another story I hear from so many different bands that they had no real say in like some of their cover or even the name of the album or the pictures on the album or anything of the packaging. They really had no say. And
Right. And you couldn't pick what you thought should be the single.
mm-hmm.
It didn't matter.
Yep.
It just, that's my, you know, uh, and I don't want to make this a bitch and moan session because it's really not, but that it should be about the artist and the music and what their thing is that they're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
More or less. Everybody's always going to have their own perception of, hey, I think it's this. And it's like that with a song, in heaven. I would
Mm-hmm.
have so many different people telling me why the song was so important. And it would have zero to do with what the song was about. But
Right.
I say, man, thanks. I appreciate it. So it's, so going back to your question, there's, that would be the only misconception would be that, you're just grouped into this person. And if
Mm-hmm.
that's not really who you are, then, you got to tell people.
Right. Yeah.
If you didn't
Uh,
ask me,
yes.
people wouldn't know if I didn't answer.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Derek, my man, this has been awesome. One of my bucket list interviews to do, and I thank you so much, man, for coming on. And once again, can you just tell everyone where they can find you at?
Yes, definitely. In an insane asylum or jail. No. Uh, go, go to mcqueenstreet.com. Just like it sounds, you can get on Facebook, look up McQueen Street, the official, um, get on streaming, search for McQueen Street, listen to the singles, and just kind of, you can stay in touch that way. If you have a comment, send an email, send a message. We typically always try to answer those and, keep us in your thoughts and in your vision and rock on.
Good deal, man. Once again, man, thank you so much. And guys, check out. I will put all the links to all the McQueen Street stuff in the description because it needs to be heard. It cannot be forgotten any longer, and just absolutely amazing stuff. So, Derek, my man, thank you so much again for coming on. And guys, stay out of that collateral damage. Until next time, I'm Trevor Crash Knight. That's Derek Welsh from Queen Street, and we will see you guys later.
See ya.
Yeah, I wrote that. It's called I Want to Rock Your Body. And then in parentheses it says to the break of dawn.